Jerk wiped a smear of oil from his forehead and squinted at the tangled mass of conduits, blinking lights, and sparks that somehow managed to call themselves the main power core of Outpost 12. He had been expecting a quiet night of recalibrating flux regulators and maybe arguing with the station's semi-sentient coffee dispenser, which, frankly, deserved better than to be treated as a rogue AI when it simply had opinions about caffeine ratios. That was before the alarms began to shriek like a chorus of disgruntled space whales. Through the flashing red lights and smoke, Jerk saw her. She wasn't like the hollow images of alien dignitaries he'd been trained to handle, perfectly symmetrical, coldly distant, but something more imposing and somehow impossibly graceful. Her armor shimmered with faint pulses of bioluminescent energy, tracing patterns that seemed alive, like the suit itself was breathing. And then he noticed her ears. Long, elegant, tapering above her crown in a way that would have made any human elf enthusiast green with envy. The princess looked exhausted, perhaps even panicked, and the sparks dancing along her armor didn't exactly scream friendly. Jerk's first instinct was to flee. His second instinct was to wonder if he should call someone for backup. His third instinct, just as strong, was to quietly hope she didn't notice him gawking. But she did, and not in a scolding way. In a way that somehow made Jerk's stomach flip and his knees wobble like he just stepped onto a zero-gravity dance floor without the anti-grav boots. She stumbled, the armor clanking, and he ran forward. Stumbled forward, slipping on a puddle of coolant, arms flailing, until he skidded to a stop right beside her. "Don't be shy, help me, human," she whispered, her voice a mixture of steel and silk, like an advanced speaker system tuned to lull you into compliance while threatening a minor electric shock. Jerk stared, trying to remember the correct protocol for aiding alien royalty in distress. Did he bow, kneel, offer his lunch? Instead, he muttered, yeah, sure, I'm great at helping, totally." Which, technically, was true if you ignored the fact that he had almost electrocuted himself 3 times just getting here. The armor twitched and hissed as if it had a personality of its own. Jerk reached out, fumbling with the locks and latches that seemed to defy both physics and his sanity. One misclick sent a small holographic warning sprouting like a miniature fireworks display, complete with a shrieking alarm that echoed through the chamber. Sorry, totally not trying to summon a panicked dragon," he said, waving his hands like a desperate magician attempting to make the alarm vanish. The princess chuckled softly, a sound both alien and disarmingly human, and it broke some invisible ice. "Careful, those are sensitive," she said, flicking a finger toward the alarms. "And slightly dramatic, apparently." Jerk laughed nervously, wiping sweat from his temple. "Right, sensitivity, got it. Note to self. Never argue with alien armor. It's like dealing with a cat, if the cat could shoot lasers." The princess's long ears twitched at his joke, and she shook her head with an amused smile, the hum of her armor quieting just enough to make him feel marginally competent. "You're not like the others," she said softly. Jerk, unsure whether this was praise or a veiled threat, shrugged awkwardly. "I try not to be," he said, "mostly because I fail spectacularly otherwise." A small hover drone zipped past, beeping in what could only be interpreted as protest at his clumsy handling. Jerk waved it off, muttering, yes, I see your point, but I'm in charge of technical assistance." "Definitely." The princess laughed again, this time leaning on him slightly as he adjusted the power conduits embedded in her armor. The warmth of her presence was surprisingly grounding, and Jerk, for all his panic and fumbling, realized he didn't want this moment to end. The galaxy was big and dangerous, sure, but for once, he was exactly where he needed to be, beside someone who, despite being royalty, was relying entirely on him. Her armor sparked again, a soft pop this time, and she winced. "See," she said, completely unreliable. Jerk tried to reassure her, patting the armor awkwardly. "Unreliable, yes, but manageable, kind of like me on a Monday." The princess shook her head, amusement dancing in her eyes, and for a brief moment, The outpost's chaos faded into background noise. He realized the absurdity of it all. Here he was, a human man, covered in grease and oil, helping a galactic princess whose species had ears longer than his own arm, amidst a cascade of failing electronics and hovering warning drones. Yet it felt right. Minutes stretched into something longer, a strange combination of frantic repair and hesitant conversation. Jerk made jokes about everything from alien food rations to zero-gravity bathroom logistics, and she responded with laughter and sarcastic remarks that made him grin despite the sparks flying around. The danger was still there, of course it was, but humor, he realized, was an unspoken truce. It was their way of saying, we may be strangers from worlds galaxies apart, but we can survive this together and maybe even enjoy it a little. When finally the alarms quieted and the last of the sparks died down, the princess looked at him, long ears twitching with something like approval. "You're not bad at this," she said softly, "for a human." Jerk swallowed, unsure whether to feel insulted or proud. "Thanks," he said, scratching the back of his neck. "And for the record, I take that as high praise." The princess's smile widened, and in that fleeting, fragile moment, the hum of the outpost didn't feel so intimidating anymore. He had no idea what the galaxy had in store next, but he did know one thing. He would follow her anywhere, even into another cascade of failing electronics, hovering drones, and possibly sarcastic armor protests. Jerk blinked at the console as it flickered uncertainly, sparks of blue electricity dancing across its surface like playful fireflies. The princess, standing beside him, shifted her weight from one foot to the other, the armor along her limbs making faint hissing and clicking noises. She looked exhausted, or maybe impatient, or both. Her long ears twitched in a way that made him think she could hear his heartbeat, or maybe she could hear the blinking console judging his every move. "All right, human," she said, a mischievous lilt in her voice, "help me with this." Jerk swallowed hard. He had been trained in human engineering protocols, minor interstellar repairs, and how to operate a surprisingly stubborn laser cutter. But assisting alien royalty in removing self-aware battle armor was, somehow, not on any syllabus he'd ever seen. Still, he tried to muster courage. "Sure," he said, nodding quickly, which made the console emit a small alarmed chirp as if agreeing or mocking. "Sure, I'm your guy, your armor guy, definitely prepared for this." She laughed softly, the sound musical and alien at once, and leaned closer, letting the armor hum lightly against his hands as he tried to find the first latch. The suit resisted him, pulsing faintly as if testing his resolve. Jerk muttered, "Okay, step 1. Convince a technologically sentient suit that you're not a complete disaster." He fumbled with a panel, accidentally triggering a tiny holographic projection of what appeared to be the suit's schematics. Lines, circles, and blinking dots filled the air between them. "I think it's mad at me," he said, squinting at the holograms. The princess's long ears twitched and she gave a light snort. "If it's mad, it's exactly the right amount." "And possibly hungry," she teased. "Careful where you poke, it bites." Jerk jumped back slightly. "Bites? Oh, good. I always wanted to be the first human to be bitten by a princess's armor." He forced a grin, though his fingers still hovered over the latches nervously. The princess tilted her head, amusement in her bright eyes, and Jerk thought for a moment that she might actually enjoy seeing him squirm just a little. Minutes passed in a series of cautious adjustments, accidental sparks, and Jerk's increasingly absurd jokes about alien fashion trends and armor etiquette. "So," he said, "this is what all the manuals neglect to mention. Interstellar armor has feelings. Makes sense. Mine's just judgmental, though, so it's kind of easier." The princess laughed, the sound echoing softly off the metallic walls, and for a moment the vastness of the outpost, the galaxy beyond, and the danger surrounding them faded. Humor, it seemed, was a universal translator. Finally, one of the suit's locks clicked open, and a faint glow dimmed as the armor yielded a little. The princess let out a relieved breath. "See, not impossible." You might survive this, she said, wiggling her shoulders in mock triumph. Jerk wiped his brow and mumbled, "Survive is my middle name." "Well, not literally. That would be awkward on my ID." She chuckled and leaned a fraction closer, her long ears brushing lightly against his arm, making him acutely aware of the warmth and softness that contrasted with the armor's rigid shell. As the removal continued, a small hover drone zipped around them, attempting to assist but mostly bumping into walls and projecting holographic help signs in comic timing. Jerk waved it off, muttering, "Yes, yes, I see, you're very helpful. Maybe stick to making coffee next time." The princess snorted, shaking her head, and he realized that even amidst a galaxy filled with wars, politics, and cosmic dangers, some moments could be absurdly ordinary, like arguing with a malfunctioning drone while assisting royalty in shedding battle armor. When the chest plate finally came free, it revealed skin that caught the dim lights of the outpost like liquid pearl. Her long ears twitched again, and she gave a teasing glance. "Careful. Try not to stare, engineer. My people might start writing poems about you," she said, her voice laced with humor and something softer, something vulnerable. Jerk cleared his throat, mumbling, "Poems, huh? I usually get memos, so that's an upgrade, I guess." She laughed again, this time a bit more gently, and the tension that had clung to him since the alarms began to lift. Next came the arm and leg plating, each section interlinked with nanocircuitry that hummed faintly under his fingertips. Jerk approached them like a cautious archaeologist discovering ancient tech, joking about treasures of the galaxy, and pretending the plates were relics from some interstellar museum. The princess played along, rolling her eyes in exaggerated exasperation and whispering, "You have the subtlety of a neutron star." He grinned. "Thank you, I try to shine bright." Even in the midst of high-tech armor removal, their banter softened the moment, creating a fragile sense of camaraderie. By the time the last of the armor was off, leaving her lithe and striking, the princess leaned lightly on him, breathing softly. Her long ears twitched in satisfaction, or maybe mild fatigue, and she allowed herself a rare, unguarded smile. Jerk, despite his awkwardness, felt an unfamiliar pride. He had navigated alien technology, hovering drones, and a princess's teasing sarcasm, and somehow, miraculously, they had reached this moment together. Humor had been the bridge, awkward jokes the handshake across species and worlds, and in the quiet aftermath of sparks and alarms, he realized that trust, odd, fragile, yet undeniable, had begun to form. And in the far reaches of Outpost 12, among blinking consoles and floating drones, a human and an alien princess stood together, laughter lingering like stardust in the air, on the cusp of something neither of them could yet name, something that promised adventure, connection, and maybe just a little chaos in the vast expanse of the galaxy. The hum of the outpost's engines filled the space between them, a low, rhythmic pulse that seemed to echo the quiet excitement lingering in the air. The princess leaned against a console, her long ears twitching slightly as she observed Jerk tinkering with a small, blinking device she had brought from her ship. "You really do have a knack for this," she said, voice teasing but soft, a subtle warmth threading through the amusement. "Or maybe you just panic well under pressure." Jerk chuckled, adjusting a tiny lever. Sparks flickered harmlessly and he waved one off. "Well, panic is kind of my specialty. Some humans call it talent, others call it a hazard pay requirement." The princess rolled her eyes, the corner of her mouth tugging into a grin, and for a moment he thought he saw something behind her amusement, a glimmer of genuine trust, the kind that wasn't demanded by royal protocol but freely offered. They had been at the outpost for hours, though it felt like minutes, working together, laughing, arguing, and occasionally tripping over malfunctioning drones or the station's convoluted gravity nodes. Jerk realized that the galaxy could be an unforgiving place, full of dangers and politics he barely understood, yet here he was, side by side with an alien princess who had chosen to rely on him. It was a responsibility that made him sweat, yes, but also one that made him feel alive in a way his quiet human life had never allowed. "All right," she said suddenly, straightening and brushing a stray strand of hair back. "Time to see if your human engineering skills can survive one last test." She handed him a small panel glowing with tiny, indecipherable runes. "This is my personal life support interface. It's temperamental." Jerk took it carefully, squinting at the alien symbols. "Temperamental, huh? You mean like a cat on interstellar coffee?" She laughed, the sound soft and lilting, and Jerk felt his nerves ease. Humor, he realized, wasn't just a crutch, it was a bridge, a shared language that made the impossible feel doable. As he worked to calibrate the interface, she watched him, long ears twitching subtly, an expression that was both amused and contemplative. "You know," she said, voice quieter now, "humans are often underestimated by my people. I wasn't sure I'd trust one with this with me." Jerk paused, fingers hovering over a delicate adjustment. "Well," he said, trying to keep his tone light, "I suppose I'm full of surprises. Mostly accidental ones, but surprises nonetheless." The princess's laugh was quieter this time, but genuine, and he felt a warmth spread through him that had nothing to do with the outpost's failing heaters. The final adjustments were painstaking, requiring precision and patience, but Jerk approached them with a newfound calm. The sparks that once made him panic were now managed, almost playful, as if the universe itself had decided to watch this moment unfold with mild curiosity. When the interface finally stabilized, the life support panel glowed steady, humming softly, and the princess's shoulders relaxed in a way that made her seem human, in the most extraordinary sense. "You did it," she said, her voice carrying that delicate balance of relief and admiration. "I knew you would, human." Jerk grinned, leaning back. "I think the technical term is I didn't blow anything up this time. That counts as success in my book." She rolled her eyes, but the smile lingered. The humor that had punctuated their journey had become a rhythm, a comforting counterpoint to the unknown dangers of the galaxy. They stood together in the quiet glow of the outpost, the chaos of alarms, sparks, and malfunctioning drones now behind them. Jerk realized how much he had changed, how moments of fear and uncertainty had been transformed into courage, empathy, and even laughter. He had learned that trust could cross species, that humor could lighten the weight of responsibility, and that connection, fragile though it might be, could flourish even in the vast expanse of stars. The princess stepped closer, long ears flicking in a subtle gesture of camaraderie. "You know," she said, voice soft, "I never expected a human to be this capable, or this amusing." Jerk laughed, shrugging. "Well, someone had to break the stereotype, and apparently survive your armor." She shook her head, smiling, and for the first time he felt the galaxy shrink just enough to make him believe that maybe, just maybe, he belonged somewhere beyond Earth. Outside, the stars stretched endlessly, distant suns blinking like watchful eyes, planets spinning silently in their orbits. Yet within the outpost, in that small corner of the universe, two unlikely allies stood together. One human, one alien princess. And the distance between worlds, species, and expectations felt smaller than ever. They had faced sparks, alarms, malfunctioning drones, and an interstellar suit with a mind of its own. They had joked, stumbled, and learned to trust one another. And now, as they shared a quiet smile, the galaxy seemed not so threatening, not so vast, but full of possibility. Jerk realized he wasn't the same man who had arrived at the outpost, clumsy, nervous, and unsure. He had grown into someone who could face the unknown, navigate the unexpected, and even laugh while doing it. The princess, in turn, had allowed herself vulnerability, relying on him, showing that even royalty could step beyond armor and protocol to forge a bond based on trust, courage, and most unexpectedly, humor. As the outpost lights dimmed to their normal hum, and the stars outside twinkled indifferently at the small dramas unfolding beneath them, Jerk and the princess shared a moment that was both ordinary and extraordinary. It was the quiet understanding